She's fierce, she's loving, she's a boss, she's giving sisterhood, support, and service. Mocha Mom. She's fierce, she's loving, she's a boss, she's giving sisterhood, support, and service. Mocha Mom. She is, she is, yeah. She is Mocha Moms. She is, She is Mocha Moms.
Good evening, Mocha Moms. Good evening, guests. Good evening, friends. We'd like to welcome you here tonight to our Mocha Moms Parent Nation, a very special parent nation, protecting the mental and physical health of our children throughout the pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you all have very, very busy lives, so it means a lot to us to have you here. For those of you all who do not know about Mocha Moms, I'll share with you a little bit. Mocha Moms is the premier voice for mothers of color through chapters nationwide and in Hawaii. And online, Mocha Moms provides support for women of color as they journey through all phases of motherhood while advocating for them nationally. Our focus is on sisterhood, support, and service. And our work for Mocha Moms is truly a labor of love. We host weekly sister socials, moms' nights out, social events, conferences, community service events, and much more. To join our sisterhood and find a local chapter in your area, please visit us at mochamoms.org. I'd like to introduce you to our national board members. You will not see them on the screen, but they are here with us tonight. I am Quay Noel Kelch. I'm the national president of Mocha Moms. We have Shelly English Figaro, who is our co-founder and president emerita. LaShawn Martin, our National President of Operations, Kim Scott, our National Treasurer, Danae Eicher, our National Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, Shalon Newton, our National Director of Corporate Sponsors and Partners, Cassandra Johnson, our National Director of Community Service, and last but not least, the engine that keeps us running, Gabriela Sanchez, our National Administrator. So to our program tonight. As you all know, the pandemic has taken a toll, not just on the physical, but on the mental health of our children. It's a topic we feel, but it's a topic that we don't often discuss. We are so grateful for our partnership with the Ad Council and Joy Collective in bringing this critical topic to our Mochas and our guests. Tonight, we will discuss COVID, pediatric health, mental health, and how we help our kids navigate. One of those programs is called Sound It Out, that assists children through music. You'll hear more about that. We ask all of you to stay on to the end to hear this very important information. We also have five $250 gift cards that we are giving away tonight, courtesy of the Ad Council and Joy Collective, so you can enjoy self-care for your mental health, and plus you can share it with your kids. Now, very important, you must be present to win. That means we need you to stay with us through the end of this program so you can see if you win. You must be present to win. So we want to kick things off with sharing a few PSAs from the Ad Council, part of their It's Up to You campaign on COVID-19 vaccines. So here we go. I think here we go.
Scene 103, take one.
Taking my vaccine and staying safe. That's what you want me to believe.
Of course.
They're saying that the vaccine is 99% effective, right?
Where are you going with this?
What about the one dude?
I want the vaccine because I care. I want you to be safe. If you was to die, man, that would literally kill me, man.
If it made you feel that way, bro, I'll probably do. I love you, man.
Love you too.
Scene 103, take
I would like to introduce to you Dr. Jamie Singleton. Dr. Jamie Singleton is chief of pediatrics at the Beaufort Jasper Hampton Comprehensive Services in South Carolina. She grew up in rural McClellanville, South Carolina, 30 miles north of Charleston, and matriculated in the public school system there with graduated valedictorian from Lincoln High School. She went on to attend Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, and graduated cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science degree in mathematics in 2001. After college, Dr. Singleton spent a year as a paralegal assistant at a prestigious firm in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and another year as a high school math teacher at Parkwood High School in Monroe, North Carolina. In 2003, she started medical school at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. She successfully matriculated through and graduated with her doctorate of medicine in 2009. She then went on to complete her pediatric residency at Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children in Orlando, Florida. She currently resides in Beaufort, South Carolina, where she works as a pediatrician and is the chief of pediatrics and medical director for the Parents as Teachers program affiliate for Beaufort Jasper Hampton Comprehensive Health Services. In her limited but oh so precious spare time, Dr. Singleton enjoys working out and traveling the US and abroad with her family and friends. She's also active in her church and does local and national speaking engagements. Dr. Singleton also enjoys baking, although she doesn't do much of it because she has no one to help her eat it. She hopes soon to be married with children. Dr. Singleton, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Dr. Singleton. How are you?
My mic was muted. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Really, really honored to have you and happy to have you here with us. So let's get right into the discussion. COVID-19, we have lived with this for a long, long time, and it looks like we're going to have to learn to live with it for a lot longer. COVID-19 now, what do parents need to know? What's top line that parents need to know right now?
I think right now, not just from a parental standpoint, but from just a personal standpoint, we're all kind of getting this COVID fatigue. We don't want to do the mask. We're tired of staying indoors, and all of that's very, very understandable. But the main thing to remember is that it hasn't gone away. Yes, the country for the most part is in a little bit of a low, and that's awesome. Prayerfully, we will stay there. But it's not gone. It's not eradicated. It's still around. People are still getting sick. People are still ending up in the hospital, and people are still dying from it. So the main thing I would say right now is one of my supervisors always say this: don't get weary in well doing. Keep doing these things. Keep doing these practices to keep your family safe. And yes, you're going to go out and do some stuff, and that's understandable, and you should, because we all need to get out and kind of socialize some, but we just need to do it in the safest manner possible.
Yeah, of course. And so the variants, every time we turn, there seems to be a new variant. When we hear about one and we think that variant has gone away or it's dying out, then we hear about another. Talk to us about the variants.
So the variants, I just like to bring to people's remembrance. Remember, viruses, bacteria, all these things are living things, and they want to do what all other living things want to do, which is just live and survive. And so we're out here trying to eradicate them, and they are trying to live and survive and grow as well as they can. Unfortunately, they need us to do that. And so that's when we end up getting ill and stuff. So what the variants are just the virus changing its form, its genetic makeup, just a tad, just enough to try to get around the defenses that we've already put in place. And viruses have done this over the years. It's one of the reasons why with the flu vaccine, you have to get a yearly flu vaccine because we know the flu mutates just enough to try to get around our defenses that we put up for it. Now, vaccine-wise, we're not sure what we're going to end up doing with COVID yet. That's still a work in progress. But the variants are just coming because the virus is mutating and it's trying to grow and live and survive. And it's doing what what living organisms want to do, unfortunately. um, and so, we had the first variant was the Delta surge, and that was good. That was okay. And then the Omicron surge came and everybody got sick. Um, and so there's the Omicron XE now that is in the news some, and that's the one where the two Omicron variants is a BA1 and a BA2, and when you put them together, that's when you get the XE. And again, this is just the virus trying to do what it's designed to do, which is live and survive.
Is that the main variant that we're dealing with right now?
Omicron BA2 is slowly starting to come up. BA1 was the first one that had the major surge, and we all just kind of came out of that. It didn't last long, but it seemed like everybody got sick. That was that one. What we're finding so far is that having had the vaccine or the BA1 infection is helping to protect against the BA2 variant. And so we're not seeing a huge surge in that, but that's the one that's kind of creeping up now. And the XE is slowly creeping in, and we'll see what happens. We're hoping that what's happening with the BA2 will continue to happen with the XE, and then that's the COVID vaccine and or having had the infection with the Omicron is going to help.
Let me just say, I'm so glad that you're here, because it's so hard to keep up. I mean, I'm listening to you right now. The Omicron and the XE and the B. It's a lot. It's a lot of information. I mean, for the average person, probably also for you to take in.
Correct. It is a lot of information. But the main thing about it, especially for my parents, I'm a pediatrician, I practice all the time. The main thing I tell them is, one, get vaccinated, because vaccination works. And it's been shown to work against all the variants so far, the Delta, the Omicron. So far, it is working against everything. So get vaccinated. But two, remember how we get viruses. They all come in through our nose and mouth for the most part. So good hand hygiene, making sure, so masks in public places do help, because what we're trying to do is slow down or stop as much as we possibly can that entrance of the virus into our mouth and nose, so that we're not getting sick.
So let's talk about the vaccines and the boosters for a second. Talk to us a little bit about the short-term side effects and the long-term impact, because that's a concern for a lot of people. We understand that they work, but we want to know how it's going to impact us tomorrow, next week, but also in the long term, years from now.
Okay, great question. In the United States, the smallest population of people to be vaccinated so far are our children, 5 to 11-year-olds. And so that's been the big push for us as pediatricians, to get those kids vaccinated, because they're in school and they're surrounded by others who are carrying viruses of all sorts, COVID included. So vaccination, short-term side effects for the children, they don't usually get fever. They tend to get headache. They may feel a little fatigued, a little sore at the injection site. Little Tylenol, ibuprofen, something to that effect would usually help and go. And that's 24, 48 hours tops. Long-term effects for vaccines in general are very, very rare. And these are the things that you just don't hear. If you think about it, you don't hear people saying, I got cancer from my vaccine that I got when I was 2 months old. That just doesn't happen. And so there's very, very rare side effects that can happen long-term from vaccines. But if they do, they happen within the first month or two. So 2 months out from a vaccine, if you haven't had anything, you probably 9 times out of 10 won't get anything. Just because vaccines, that's just not how vaccines operate. So far, none of the vaccines that we have in play have caused long-term effects years out.
And that's good to know, because I know that one of the concerns that some parents have is they think this is new. when in fact it's not new. I mean, share with us a little bit about that. It's been around. The mRNA has been around for a while, correct?
Yes, so the components of the vaccine, the only new part, and I'll put that in quotation marks, the only new part is the mRNA part, and that's the part that gives us the immunity, that helps us build the antibodies. The other components of the vaccine have been used in other vaccines, and those are in other medicines. And those are things like some sugars, some lipids, um, just all those things. It's been used in other parts. What else? Sugars, lipids, I'm blanking on the other parts, but they're used in other parts of
Yeah.
vaccines already. So the only new part was the messenger RNA. But the messenger RNA itself is used in cancer treatments, and it has been used in cancer treatment for decades. So that it's been used in medicine for 20 years now plus. This is just the first time it's been used as a vaccine component.
That's good to know. And I actually think that's important information to share with people, because a lot of people think, this just popped up. It didn't pop up. This has been researched for a really, really long time.
It's been researched for a very, very long time. I also like to tell people, people think, oh, the vaccine got put together too fast. They skipped some steps. They did not skip any steps in the vaccine and creating the vaccine. All the testing, all the clinical trials, everything was done. They kind of overlap some steps, which usually doesn't happen in vaccine when we're creating new vaccines. We don't tend to overlap. We tend to do a stair step thing. But because we were fighting this virus in real time and needed it sooner than later, they overlap some steps. And that overlapping was just making sure that we could manufacture a product before we actually had a product to manufacture. So they started building machines and buildings to be able to manufacture the product on a large scale before we actually had a product to manufacture.
Now, it is already May. Summer is coming. Many of us want to travel. We want to get out. We want to see our family. We want to see our friends. We want to get on airplanes. We want to get on trains. Share with us some travel guidance for vacations, for summer break. What should we go? Should we not go? What should we do?
That is really going to depend on the family. And I say depend on the family in the sense that it is going to depend on where you're going, maybe. Maybe there's a surge going on in that area and you don't want to go there right then. It's going to depend on who you're going to be around, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, public events versus maybe small private events. And it's really going to depend on what your comfort level is. COVID's not going away. We will be doing this COVID thing for decades to come now. So it's really going to figure out, like, where are you comfortable with? Some parents are ready to get out and they're ready to take their children. Some parents are still wanting to stay home and do some things closer to home. And all of those are okay. I would say for right now, pay attention to what the levels of the virus are doing where you're traveling and when you're traveling. And on public transportation, I know they dropped the mask mandates on public transportations and all that stuff on flights and trains, but I would suggest you wear your mask. You just don't know who has what. We know there's asymptomatic infection. You can have the virus and not even know you have it. So we just don't know who has what. So the safest thing you can do for your family is to put your mask on, keep your hands clean, try to keep your hands out your face. If you're going to eat, make sure you clean your hands. If you got soap and water, that's better. But if you don't and you got hand sanitizer, that works too. Use your hand sanitizers and just do the best health practices to keep your family safe.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, to mask or to not mask. But you say always err on the side of caution and mask when you can.
Mask when you can, especially if you're indoors. You're going to be on a plane. You're going to be on a train. You're traveling by bus or some other type of transportation where there's a lot of public people. Recently, my family and I went to Disney. And when no one was there, we felt safe. We were outside, and then as the park got crowded, we're like, hey, let's put on a mask. It just really depends. Because It's harder for it to spread as you're outdoors because the wind is just blowing things away, and that's beautiful. But if you're in close knit quarters, even outdoors, you can spread the virus. And so, especially if you're in public places, I think it's best to mask. That's just how I feel about it. And especially when the virus is high. So if you're debating whether and what not to mask, check your local DHEC and see what your COVID cases are. If they're high and they're on the rise, then you probably want to mask. If they're low and they're staying under 5, 10%, then you might feel safer not masking.
Talk a little bit about long COVID. That's a big concern for a lot of folks, and a lot of folks are dealing with it as well.
A lot of folks are dealing with it, and children do get long COVID. Long COVID is just continuing to have some type of symptoms after the initial infection. You know, you're a week or two out and you think you're feeling better, but you're still feeling a little fatigued. You're still getting headachy every once in a while. You may still have some stomach upset. And all of those are symptoms of long COVID. And it can last for months. And so far, we don't have anything to stop it. We don't have any treatment for long COVID. The best treatment for long COVID is not getting COVID. And the best way you can do that is to be vaccinated.
Understood, understood. We are going to pause just for a moment. I believe we were unable to show that second PSA in the beginning. I think we're going to run that now. And then when we come back from that, I have some questions that have been submitted for you to answer. Lots and lots of questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can.
Sounds good.
COVID has been a really long fight.
As a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Every day, parents ask me if their child 5 and above should get vaccinated.
And the answer is yes. It's an added layer of protection.
It's safe and effective for children.
It's definitely safer than getting the virus.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine,
we're here.
COVID has been a really long fight.
As a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Every day, parents ask me if their child 5 and above should get vaccinated.
And the answer is yes. It's an added layer of protection.
It's safe and effective for children.
It's definitely safer than getting the virus.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine,
we're here to help.
As a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Every day, parents ask me if their child 5 and above should get vaccinated.
And the answer is yes. It's an added layer of protection.
It's safe and effective for children.
It's definitely safer than getting the virus.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine,
we're here to help.
I think everybody got that. I hope you got that. We ran it a couple times so you could get all of it. And shout out to Dr. Singleton for being a part of it. That's wonderful. So let's just move to some questions because a lot of questions have come in. So let's just start. First one, have there been any recent cases where kids have gotten severely ill from contracting COVID?
It's been hard to kind of keep up with the childhood data because a lot of states aren't necessarily giving that data to the major governmental organizations. So children have gotten sick, and unfortunately, there have been some childhood deaths. Of course, they're the smaller part of the population. They are, I think if I remember correctly, about 19% of the population of children are getting COVID, and an even smaller number, maybe about 1% are ending up in the hospital. But I like to say, even though it's a small number, you don't want it to be you. So, it's best to be vaccinated. And what's happening is that we're seeing more children that are unvaccinated end up in the hospital as compared to their counterparts that are vaccinated.
Right. Next question. Will vaccinating my children impact their fertility when they get older? This is something that has been circulating.
That has been circulating. I've had a couple of parents come in and say, have that concern themselves. It does not have anything to do with fertility for anyone. Nothing whatsoever. So you don't have to worry about your children having being able to have children when it's their time. It has nothing to do with fertility.
On the guest, please share that with all of your family and friends. It's really important to get that information out.
Correct. It really is important. It has nothing to do with fertility. I'm not sure where that started, but it has nothing to do with fertility.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Given that it's allergy season, how do we know if it's allergies or COVID? And does having allergies make COVID even worse in children?
You really don't know if it's allergies or COVID. They have the same symptoms: runny nose, congestion, scratchy throat. They're all the same. And so right now, the best thing to do is be tested. Really, that's the best thing to do. If you get some, and I know it's hard, kids are in school and it seems like they're always sick, especially the little ones that are in daycare. They seem to get sick all the time. But there are plenty of at-home tests. The government now is sending at-home tests if you sign up for them online. If you check your local pediatric offices, some of them, I know our office is giving out at-home tests free of charge as part of another governmental program. They've supplied them so that we can give them out. So if you can't get them yourself, find someone to get them. But definitely the symptoms are the same. And so the best thing to do is be tested, either at home or by a medical professional. And allergies don't necessarily make COVID any worse, not just the runny nose part of it. Now, allergies tend to run with asthma. People who are allergic tend to have asthma. Asthma and having that issue with your lungs, that can make COVID worse. That's definitely something that we don't want our asthmatics to get, is COVID.
Right, right. If my child gets COVID, I hear that they have natural immunity once they get past it. Is that true? And how long does that last?
They do. Everyone does have some natural immunity. What we're seeing so far is it lasts for about 6 months. The downside to the natural immunity is it's just primarily against that strain of COVID. So going back to the variants, if you had the Delta strain of COVID and then now you're infected with the Omicron, that immunity has not been helping as much with the Omicron because it's two different strains. The best help is to get vaccinated. So far, the vaccines have been helping against every strain, the Delta, the Omicron, and its subvariants of the Omicron. So it does help some, but it's not the best effect, the best thing to do.
So I'm asking this, I'm adding in a question. I'm asking this question on behalf of mothers of really, really young children. When will there be a vaccine for children under the age 5? When is that coming?
When is it coming? We're waiting. We're waiting. The last I heard is they were hoping maybe May, but it looks like it might be pushed back into June. They're still testing it. They were looking at a 3-dose series because most vaccines, especially the ones for children, they're 2-dose vaccines, one then and one 3 weeks later. For the younger kids, they were looking at a 3-dose series. And then they said, well, maybe we can keep it at 2. And now they might be going back and forth between the 2. And we're waiting. We're all waiting. I would love as a pediatrician to get our younger kids vaccinated. They're the ones, if you're looking at those children from 0 to age 18, the kids under 5 are the ones with the higher hospitalization rates. And rightfully so. They have smaller, weaker immune systems. And so it really is impacting them.
Got it. Okay. So I think we are going to move now to see another PSA. This is part of the Ad Council's mental health campaign. It's called Sound It Out. And I believe there's a second one called Seize the Awkward.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents.
You think you created family out of characters?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna take that, make it into a song.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at? Where you at? On the way out. In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
The life that an artist lives and the touring that we do and the music that we make, and see this career that we have is super fun, and there's no way you could be sad or mad or depressed about anything. But, you know, I deal with the same issues as well. Taking care of yourself and making sure you don't always feel alone is kind of the most important part. What you really need is a friend. Kind of just recharges your soul in a way. Anytime my friends kind of beat around the bush about stuff, I like to call them out on it. If you feel something in your gut, if you feel something's wrong, you should talk to them about that. I know it may seem awkward and difficult to reach out to a friend who's struggling with mental health, but the best thing you can do is be a friend. Start the conversation and learn more at seizetheawkward.org.
Are you muted?
I was muted.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Back on. If you don't mind just sticking around just for a moment, I'd like to introduce you to another very special guest. We are bringing in Dr. Charmaine Jackman, who's going to be joining us. Dr. Jackman, are you there?
I am. Hi, good evening, everyone.
How are you? Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Jackman. Dr. Charmaine Jackman is with the, help me pronounce this, the ACOMA Project?
That's correct. You got it.
The ACOMA Project SME and founder and CEO of InnoPsych Incorporated. Dr. Jackman is a Harvard-trained licensed psychologist with over 23 years of experience in the mental health field. She is a national spokesperson on BIPOC mental health and advocates for emotional well-being for all. Dr. Jackman has worked in schools for over 17 years and served as the Dean of Health and Wellness at Boston Arts Academy from 2011 to 2021. Dr. Jackman is the founder and CEO, as I said, of InnoPsych Incorporated, a mental health tech startup on a mission to disrupt racial inequities in mental health. Super important. InnoPsych also works with organizations to cultivate emotionally safe work cultures that help employees of color to thrive. She has won several awards for her impactful work, including the 2021 American Psychological Association's Citizen Psychologist Award and the City of Boston's 2021 Innovator of the Year Award. She's also been featured on national media outlets such as the New York Times, NPR, PBS, and the Boston Globe. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So question for both of you all. How do pediatricians and psychologists work together when it comes to children's mental health?
So, and I'll also add, I'm a mom of an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, so I bring that, and I'm a mom as well. So for me, and Dr. Jamie, Dr. Singleton, I'm curious to hear your perspective, but it's been extremely important for me to work closely with the pediatrician, particularly in really extreme cases. I've had a number of cases that I could think about right off the top of my head where the families didn't necessarily trust the mental health or the school counselor, but really had a great connection with their pediatrician. And so I could think of it with a family, a young woman who was dealing with eating disorders. And so we were very, very tight with the pediatrician. Like, I had her cell phone number, she had mine. We would have calls, really trying to coordinate care and make sure that we were on the same page. So it's been essential in my work.
It definitely is an essential relationship. A lot of the times, we are usually the ones diagnosing them, even though our diagnosis may not be specific. We know that there's some depression there, there's some anxiety there, and we need to get them to somebody who can do the counseling. We have in our medical training, we have some but limited training when it comes to counseling and helping people, children especially, get from where they are to where they need to be. And so that relationship is so important. It really is. And there's been times I've had to call or speak with the psychologist or psychiatrist about a patient, making sure they're on the right medications, if we need a medication, just all that stuff. So yes, very important.
There is really nothing more powerful than a pediatrician and a psychologist working for the physical and the mental well-being of the child. I just saw that in the chat. It's absolutely right. It's super important to look at the whole person, mental and physical. So thank you so much. Dr. Singleton, I think you have to leave. So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for answering those questions. I know it's a lot for us to take in, but you really help us to synthesize it and to figure out what's the best decision for us. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you soon.
Yes, just call me. I'm a phone call away. But thank you guys for having me so much. If you need to reach out, I'm here. We as pediatricians love answering questions, and we love giving great information, good, correct information. So well, thank you for having me. You guys take care. Enjoy your night.
Take care. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Jackman, we're going to start with you. And we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on mental health. It's not something that we talk about often. It's something that we maybe talk about in our own homes, but it's not something we talk about in the open. But the truth of the matter is that this pandemic has affected us drastically, and it's particularly affected the African American community. So talk to us a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on mental health.
Absolutely. And, I'll start, as I shared, I'm a mom and I'm a parent. And so I would say, one of the things that I have noticed in my experience as a professional, but also personally, like I watched one of my children really, probably in the height of 2020, start to withdraw socially, didn't want to get out of bed. And I was like, the alarm bells were just going off. And so I'm like, okay, so I talked to my husband, like, we need to do something, because if we don't address it now, I can definitely see this leading into more severe depression. And so we really kind of took charge. We got my child set up with a therapist, and that really helped. It was a little challenging because it's, a younger kid doing virtual therapy was a little challenging, but it was something we really felt was important for him. And so I think what we've seen in terms of the impact of on mental health through the pandemic is that the social isolation was severe for many of us, right? And think about our children. Our lives are so centered around community and friendships and school. And so that kind of abrupt disconnection was really, really, really challenging. We also saw an increase in fear and anxiety, right? This illness, you walk out your door, you're not sure if you're going to catch it, right? And so that just really, really exacerbated the functioning of everyone, I would say. But we also saw then that leading to more depression. We also saw people dealing with grief, right? And so there are all these impacts, and we think about the social determinants of health. People were losing their jobs, worried about finances, homelessness, and houselessness. And so all of these things are really impacting just the way we live and operate. And so we saw that, I would say the biggest one was the increase of stress and anxiety for people.
And not even just in children. I mean, all the way around, parents as well.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it feeds the other. When parents are stressed, children feel it. When children are stressed, parents are stressed because their children are stressed. So it's a really vicious cycle.
You got it. You got it. Yes, for sure.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the latest stats on mental health with children and teens.
Yeah, so I think one of the ones I want to highlight is we typically see mental health concerns about 1 in 5 children, so about 20% of the population. And I would say that's pretty consistent. What we saw during COVID is, though, that access to mental health care was very limited. And so, I think everyone was looking to get connected to therapists. So we saw while 1 in 5 children have a mental health disorder, only about 20% receive treatment. And now I'll add a caveat, because those numbers are national numbers. When we think about communities of color, I would argue that those numbers are even less for our communities. And part of that is because of the stigma, but also the access to therapists. So I'm a psychologist, and one of the things I always point out, Black psychologists represent about 4% of all psychologists in the country. 4%, right? And so we think about just again, the barriers around stigma, and then you can't find someone who looks like you, who understands your culture. That really adds even more barriers to access and utilizing those services.
So as parents, how can we recognize the signs, mood swings, puberty? I mean, how can we see it?
So easy thing I say is you really have to notice and listen. And so there are ways in which, noticing changes in behavior, noticing changes in mood. I think what we talked about, particularly for adolescents, right? We see some mood changes as they're going through puberty. And actually, adolescence tends to be, the average age is around 14, where children will be diagnosed with a mental health condition. So there is something around those hormone changes. But what I always tell parents is looking for changes in their mood and behavior. So more irritability, more sadness, more withdrawn. I think one of the challenges that I hear from families a lot is, particularly students, when they have access to phones, a lot of their world now is around this device. So you may not be seeing some of those things. So really creating routines in your family where you can observe your child's behavior is really important. But noticing changes in eating, sleeping, maybe withdrawing from their friendships or activities that they like to do, those are really red flags that I have parents pay attention to. I think your schools where your teachers see your children on a daily basis, I think those are really good conversations to also have. I know as a school therapist, I often would see those students would come to me, and our conversation was always bringing families in the loop. I think one of the things that I would say one of the hardest challenges about my role as a school psychologist was that families, particularly families of color, because of our mistrust around mental health, often weren't as open to receiving services or hearing about that. So I often would just really take it as my opportunity to build a relationship with that family so that they could trust the information that I was providing to them. But really, again, it comes down to noticing and listening to what your child is saying, what they're doing.
So we've talked about the stigma, and particularly in our community, and we've talked a little bit about how to notice the signs. How do you begin the conversation with your children? How do you open up the door to start talking about this?
Yeah, and it ranges from, based on their age. I think for younger children, there's a really great opportunity. I love books, and so I often would use books. I would find books around emotions, music, and songs. I think those are really great ways to engage younger children in those conversations. For older kids, maybe the middle school Sound It Out campaign does a really good job in music to have those conversations that we just saw in the PSA. So I often would say, have conversations like, "Oh, I was reading this," or "I was watching this," right? And using those as conversation openers with your children. Also, I also find, I often will even ask with my own children, it's like, I've been hearing about this thing. What do you think about it? What do you know about it? Right. So having them be the experts. And one of the things I would say, thinking about our generations, right? I think our children are having more conversations about mental health and emotional well-being in their schools and even around the social media than we might have had growing up, right? So they are pretty versed. I know I would have kids who would come to me and say, "I think I have bipolar. I was looking on Google," right? So there are ways that they have access to information. So I
Yes.
think in ways that it's not necessarily that hard to have that conversation. Sometimes it's noticing our own anxiety or nervousness about bringing up the topic. And so I think there are ways that you can really do that using books, music videos, to really break down that conversation. And again, they're experts on this, so tap into their expertise.
Share with us some more tips about how to reduce stress and anxiety. And of course, they mirror what we do. So, I mean, these are tips not just for them, but for us as well.
Absolutely, right? And I think you were said it earlier, right? If we're stressed, they kind of play on that. They see that and they work through that. They model that. So I think one of the things that I really love and have really adopted in my own practice is mindfulness. And so it's really about using breath, work, being present, focus. And it helps us slow down our thinking. It helps us slow down, really invite more stillness and not always doing. So that's been a wonderful set of strategies that I work with clients. Their meditations. And one of the things I often talk with, particularly when I'm working with communities of color and with faith communities, sometimes meditation, it can feel like there's some religious thing that's going to shift your religion. So I really encourage people to think about it. I often also use the analogy like prayer is a way to meditate, right? So when we sit down to prayer, it's about kind of drowning out the external and really kind of focusing on that relationship that you have with your higher power. So I really find that meditation is a really good way to silence that. Also bringing in activities around movement, right? I think we, particularly during COVID, weren't moving very much. And so how are we stretching our body? Our bodies and our minds are so intricately connected. And the more that we can find ways to integrate those two, it really helps reduce our stress.
Yeah, those are all really, really great tips for all of us to do and for us to make it a routine, So just as we brush our teeth, we
Exactly.
do
And I tell people really, sometimes we think about exercise or we think about meditation or we think about whatever those tools are that we have for these long periods of time that we don't have time for. But really just taking 5 minutes to walk around the block or to just sit still, put the phone away, listen to a song that you like, right? I tell people, do things that bring joy to you, do things that make your soul smile. That's a way to relax. And I often lead with too, like we all have what we need. We all know what we need to bring more self-care. You don't need any more tips from me. I have lots of them, right? But you don't need any more tips. It's really about that mindset and prioritizing, my mental health matters. And if
Yeah.
I take this 5 minutes for me, I'm actually going to get more time back. I'm going to have more patience with my children. I'm going to have more patience with my partner, right? So I think those are really valuable ways of really, again, thinking about our own mindset and prioritizing our needs, because when we're well, our families are well.
You're so right. And we do know. I mean, we know what we need to do. It's, we have to put our mind to it, and we have to make sure we do it. We do it regularly. When do you seek therapy? When should someone seek therapy, and what resources exist? Where do we turn? I mean, we've got this vast internet. Where do we look?
Right. I think, those are some great questions. So first, in terms of resources, a Coma Project has some really programs, and we actually have some free therapy resources as well. So please definitely check out the website. InnoPsych is another organization, is an organization that I founded that's really has only therapists of color. And so it's a national database that features therapists of color. And we have lots of educational content on there. We do lots of self-care and wellness challenges. So tons of information on those two websites. But, the question around when to see a therapist, and I wish Dr. Singleton was still on here, because I know many of us, we are used to taking our children to the annual appointments, annual physicals. And I really, what I've noticed is we're seeing our pediatricians, you may notice this, ask some mental health questions about depression and safety. So we're seeing more of that integration. But I would love to see people go to a therapist for their annual emotional wellness checkup.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean,
Right?
I read the other day, it's mental hygiene.
It
Just like
is,
dental
yeah.
hygiene. It's mental hygiene. And
It's
that's
our whole body, right? We act like our bodies are this thing, and then our brains are this thing. We're all connected. And so that's what I really advocate for. There's no right or wrong time to see a therapist. You can see a therapist for any range of things when there's nothing wrong, for self-improvement. Really, if you're noticing shifts in your behavior, as I mentioned at the top of this, I was noticing one of my children was really withdrawing and they weren't themselves. And so I got on it right away, because I knew I didn't want the longer that we don't address a mental health concern, the more severe it gets, and then it's harder. And we do see that in communities of color and in Black communities. When we actually go to seek treatment, it's really, really far into an illness. And then there are more severe things that we have to do. And then that creates more anxiety for families. So I would say, I tell people, COVID, you blame COVID. Like, no one will judge you or should judge you for seeing a therapist at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to move to some questions that have come in, and many questions came in. So we'll try to get to as many as we can here. How do we help our children reconnect with friends and society after 2 years of virtual learning? How does this differ by gender also?
Yeah, I think that is a question that I get so often. And, and they're still right. We're still, some children are back into school. One of the things I think is really important is, how do we help students? The question is, how do we help our children kind of re-socialize? I know there's some young people, some little children who haven't really had that experience, right? And so how do we build the tools to help them develop those social skills? I think is really important. So I think having more group therapy experiences are really helpful. If you have the finances, finding opportunities for after school or weekend programs that help to really develop those coping skills, those strategies to help build relationships and connections. We are seeing it across the gamut in schools. I think there are lots of media attention around some of the stress that teachers are experiencing because of students' more aggression and really low frustration tolerance. That's really, I think, a direct result of not being in school and not kind of having this routine of how to be social and how to be kind friends. So really focusing and giving opportunities to have those natural experiences, I think will be really helpful.
Okay. What do I do if my mental health is suffering alongside my children's mental health due to being overwhelmed by the pandemic and overworked in general. That's a big one.
That is real. One of the things that I do, I work with companies, and one of the questions I often ask at the beginning of any workshop, to share some words that you've been feeling the past week. And I would say consistently the top words are overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the top 3 words. And so it's real, right? It's very real that you may be experiencing something that your child is also experiencing. And I think if you're noticing that, get support, right? Don't wait till it's really in a difficult situation. I think one of the things that we see sometimes, people are experiencing things and they don't questions. And that's why it's so important, to have these conversations. What are the signs? What are the symptoms? You're noticing changes in your sleep, you're eating, you're not feeling yourself. It's really an opportunity to get support. And a first stop might be, talking to your own primary care physician. There's another website that I often send people to, Mental Health America. They have a number of screening tools, so you can check if you're feeling, you're worried about anxiety or depression. So that's another resource that I often share with people to get support. But again, checking in with your PCP or your pediatrician is really helpful. Don't wait till it gets to be too bad.
Yeah, I mean, so many of us are in reactive mode and not in, proactive mode. And we need to really get to the point where, we're ahead of it instead of reacting to what it is we're feeling when it gets too late in some
Yeah.
instances. All right. What is the best way to introduce your tweens to therapy? Interesting age.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, you never want to start with a conversation like, you need therapy or I'm going to send you to a therapist, right? Because oftentimes if you say it like that in terms of a punishment, then people are going to be more defensive and less open to that. I would say, again, I think many schools have at least one counselor in the school. I think there's more of a push. We're seeing more mental health advocacy in schools. So your children will have more access to therapists than maybe you did growing up. I think, again, one of the things that I always find helpful is noticing the behavior and then using that to share with people. So I noticed that you've having trouble sleeping, or I noticed that your eating habit is changed. And I want to make sure that we understand what's going on. So I want you to be able to talk with a therapist. We can go together, right? So really kind of normalizing that, connecting it to something that you've seen, even asking them, I've noticed this. Have you noticed this? Are you worried about it? I think really engaging in a conversation versus telling someone, telling a child that you're going to do this, then they have less agency and they're likely to be more resistant to it.
Can you share one more time the websites that you mentioned? Because I think they bear repeating. I think Mocha's and guests want to refer to those sites.
Absolutely. So one is Mental Health America, and I think it's just screening.mental health America. We talked about InnoPsych for the National Therapists of Color Directory, and then a Coma Project has free therapy resources for young people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. How do you best deal with anxiety in kids?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that what I've seen is really noticing, right? Oftentimes when young children are anxious, we might see it can be really hard to pinpoint. I think sometimes you may see crying, difficulty in transitioning from one activity to another. It may also look like opposition, like not wanting to do something. So it's really important to try to understand what's going on for your child. And I have a child like that at home, right? And so I've had to learn, like, really kind of slow down. For example, my daughter, she has a music program. And whenever we arrive late, she does not want to go in by herself. And initially I would be very, you need to go, we're late, you need to go in. And taking 3 minutes to argue with her versus taking a minute to just walk in with her, to pause and slow down. So really understanding, really kind of taking a step back. It's going to require a little bit more patience and understanding, and then that will help you prepare, right? So I know, like, if I'm going to send her to a program, I need to arrive on time. I need to arrive early, right? So how do you then understand what your child needs and then be able to respond to that? So I think, again, noticing that the anxiety doesn't come up with, the child's going to say I'm anxious, right? But there are going to be behaviors. You might see clingy behaviors, regression, difficulty transitioning. So noticing those behaviors and then thinking about how do you support them in that. There are lots of mental health apps. One I use myself is Liberate app. Another one kids is called My Life. It used to be called Stop, Think, Breathe. And they have lots of really cool meditation and mindfulness, thanks to slow down. And my children are always taking my phone to use them. So they're really engaging. So I think those are really tools. There are lots of tools out there, and really being open to using those tools to teach a skill. One of the things I kind of have a pet peeve about using like TV and videos to kind of calm a child down, it doesn't really teach them anything, but the apps actually teach them skills. And those are things you can do together as a family to model. I think that's really helpful.
That was my next question. What strategies can we use to help our children calm down when they're upset or sad?
Mhm. Yeah. And it starts with us, right? Sometimes when our kids are upset, we're also upset. So how do we kind of model calming down first so that we can be present for them? One of there's another app that I use that I really love. It's called In Love While Parenting.
Oh, I love
And,
the title.
yeah, right. And I'm always learning, I'm a learner, so I'm always learning. And one of the things that I thought was really helpful, I'm a psychologist over 20 years, and I saw this like, oh my God, love it. So one of the things it said, oftentimes when children are upset, we're also trying to be rational with them. Like, you fell, like you shouldn't have been running, right? But that's not the time to teach.
Right.
There are like, crying and in a different mode. So really that time is about giving support. And when they've calmed down, and there's some time away, then you can have that conversation about how do we do this differently. But when they're activated in that moment, that's not the time to try to be rational, right? Because they don't get it, right? They don't, right?
And they might not even hear what you're saying.
They're not. They're in emotional brain right now. And so really kind of noticing, okay, when can I have those moments? What do they need in this moment? They need me to just soothe. And I think it's really sometimes this relearning, right? For lots of the Black community, we grow up with tough love, right?
Yeah.
And so that tough love really sometimes prevents us from showing empathy in a moment that our child really needs it.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are several levels of mental health professionals. How do you pick or select the best mental health specialist for your children? What should you look for?
Absolutely. And I have a resource on the InnoPsych directory. It's under our frequently asked questions. But we talk a lot about, particularly that we answered a lot of questions for people if they're new to therapy, because we get lots of questions like these. So I think one of the things, just to notice, there are different levels. So there are people with master's levels. So they have 2 years of formal training. And most programs, you have your coursework and you're also have internships along the way. You're required to, in order to practice independently or without supervision, to have a license with your state. So those are things you can ask. For someone like me with a PhD, I have 4 years of academic training and then a 1-year internship. And then I've also did a postdoctoral fellowship. So there's longer training. So I always tell people, it doesn't mean like you could have 2 years of training and be a better clinician than someone who has, 10 years. But it's really about, I think for you who are here, to really understand that you can ask questions, that when you are looking for a therapist, check in with a couple people. You don't have to go with the first person that you meet, right? So really try to find what is this person's energy, right? First, do I feel comfortable in space with them, in community with them? You can ask them about their approach to treatment. How do they gain success? How do they help the clients work through the different problems that they're coming with? Some people are more quiet. Some therapists are more quiet in sessions. Some are more active. There are different types of therapies. So I think it also depends on what you're looking for. There are different, there's talk therapy. There are more body-based therapies like EMDR, there's tapping. So there are lots of there's expressive arts therapies. So there are lots of different types of therapies. So really thinking about what's going to work for me, what's going to work for my child, how do I get them to open up? That might also be more helpful than, in essence, how many years a person has practiced.
Right.
And it's your right to ask those questions up front. And if it's the 2 or 3 sessions, right, don't kind of give up too easily. The first session is usually us asking you a bunch of questions to get some history. So it doesn't always, and we try to work it in where it doesn't feel like you're being interrogated, but we do need to get some background information from you. But so I say, give it 2 or 3 sessions. And if you feel like it's not working, have a conversation with the person. If it's not going to work, then move on to someone else. Don't give up on therapy. Just find the one that works for you.
Someone said in the chat, finding the right therapist sounds like dating.
It is. You must have been to one of my I say that all the time.
That's what it is.
It's a relationship. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're going to be sharing very personal, very vulnerable things, and you want to have that trust. I remember someone telling me, I actually worked with a student, and they would say, "Oh yeah, I didn't tell my therapist." I'm like, "Well, what's the point? You have to tell us what's going on." And we're not going to judge. We're professionals. We're keeping your information confidential. If you're using insurance, we do have to report a diagnosis, but your information is confidential with us. We're not gossiping about you. It's really about support. And, for those, I know if people have been to therapy, you can post in the chat. It is a beautiful process. And to be in a space where someone's just focused on you, they don't have any agenda but your agenda.
Wonderful.
That's a beautiful thing, right?
Beautiful thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, let's talk about social media for a second, because this is really big with our kids. How badly does social media affect mental health in kids, and why?
Yeah, there's a lot that we're still learning about social media. And so I'm really tuned into some of the research that's coming in. Actually was listening to an NPR news story recently, and he said this social media was supposed to be this great connector. But because of the way that they operate, right, we're on a device and we're often tuned in, and we're actually kind of not tuning into what's around us. Social media. I think one of the things is, I think the hard part is that it's one device where our children can have exposure to so many things that we don't even know.
Yeah.
Imagine how much comes through that screen, depending on how many different apps, news, videos that are sent to you that you didn't even maybe want to watch, right? There's so much. And I think about us growing up. Well, I think about me growing up, I don't want to age myself, but we had one TV and I grew up in Barbados, so we had one channel, right? So there wasn't much that we could watch that was R-rated or anything like that. I think that's kind of the challenge, that our children, they're exposed to so much information, and we're not next to them, talking them through it, processing it with them, unpacking it with them. And I think that's really the hard part, is that there's so much that they're exposed to, and we just don't know. We don't know where to start.
Yeah. So how do we manage that? I mean, go on your phone and go on whatever platform you want to, or is it more about having a conversation with them about?
Yeah, it is. And my son's next door. This is an ongoing conversation in our house. This is an ongoing conversation about that digital responsibility, that digital literacy, that accountability, right? So you're doing homework on your computer, and you can be I get distracted, right? So it's normal. But how I really want to be with you and be able to talk with you about the different things that you see. And so what we have been doing, it's still a work in progress. I don't have any magic answers out there about this
You
social media
don't?
thing. I'm just keeping it
You
real. And if anybody does, please share. But like we just, it's ongoing conversation. So what did you listen to today? What are you watching? Oh, let me watch that with you, right? So we're just, I have to kind of insert myself into this space.
Yeah, yeah. It's as you said, it's definitely a work in progress for a lot of parents, and it probably, I mean, it never ends. It
Right,
never ends,
right,
and
right.
hopefully our children will develop healthy habits, as a result of the conversations that we have with them.
Right. And I think, I say to, I'm holding up. We don't have a cell phone yet for my older one, but I think again, really, is this something you would watch with me? Right? What are the family value? Like going back to how are we showing kindness, right? If you're watching something, how are you not passing something on that you've seen, right? That's cyberbullying. So it's a lot about education. And again, they're getting some of this in school anyway. And so how are we reinforcing that? And how are we connecting it to our family values? I think has been helpful.
Yeah, that's super helpful. What are your recommendations for getting special needs children involved in music to help mental health? This is a really
I
important.
love this question. Yeah, and you mentioned in my bio, I worked in an arts high school for 17 years, and one of the beautiful things that we were able to do, we were able to have students with different mental health and intellectual ranges who really enjoyed music and art, and I think that they're really powerful opportunities to showcase to bring people out their personality, but also to engage in conversations. So I think music and the arts are just really great opportunities to allow children to express themselves. And so that's something that's been helpful for even in our own family, right? You have to do an art, right? But it is another way to help people express what's going on for them. Music is powerful. I always say music transcends language. And so I love, again, the Sound It Out campaign that really helps, middle school, this is my first year with a middle schooler, but it really helps open up those conversations. Music has been a great way for our family, whether it's dancing, sharing songs. We each have a playlist. So when we're in the car, everybody gets a turn to share their songs. So it's been a good way to communicate as a family as well.
I love it. Tell us a little bit more about the Sound It Out campaign. What ages does that campaign benefit?
Yeah, it's
How
really
young is too
focused.
young?
Say that again?
How young is too young?
For music?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the Sound It Out campaign really focuses on the middle school age,
Mhm.
but music is great. I mean, we used to actually when our kids were born, they had iPods and we would play music for their bedtime, just instrumental music. But I think it's a great way to open up and to communicate it. It builds in music movement. Music brings people joy, right? Like if I were to ask you to like type right now the song, think about a song that makes you smile, that
Oh,
puts you in a
yeah.
good mood. You could put that and you immediately will smile,
Well, let me
right?
just little quick story. The other day, I heard us. I'm gonna age myself. I'm gonna date myself by sharing this.
Okay, it's okay.
But the other day, I heard a Stevie Wonder song from Songs in the Key of Life, and I said that was sixth grade. That was sixth grade, and I had my eyes lit up. It was just so joyful to hear that song because it literally took me back to sixth grade.
Mhm, mhm. And you could probably remember those lyrics, right?
Oh, I can still sing them today. Don't ask me to do it, but I can.
Right? And so that is the power of music.
Yeah.
Joy that meant positive memories. So yeah, so I just love music as an opportunity to open up. And there's a type of therapy there's music therapy. So there are ways that we use music and song lyrics. There's lots of ways that we can use that in our therapy sessions. And working at an arts high school, I had students and interns who would actually do that with our students, and very powerful, very, very powerful. Whether it's creating song lyrics, creating beats, So I think and again, that Sound Out campaign really models that really
Yeah,
well.
that's wonderful. Okay, I have one live question that I'm going to ask you. How much does an artist, meaning singer, rapper, or any music artist, have an impact on our children's lives with their mental health? Because our kids come home and they bring up whoever. I mean, they say a name of someone who they idolize. What impact does the artist or the artist's songs have on our children's lives with their mental health?
I think it's, I have been seeing this, and for me, as a mental professional, for me, it's powerful to see because, and there's some musicians who are either creating songs that talk about their mental health and how they're using therapy, which I think is very powerful. And again, you think about, the younger age, right? And they're the celebrities that they idolize, that they value, and they see someone being open and vulnerable about their own experience. That really opens up that opportunity. I was at a concert on Monday, and there's a musician who, our goal was there to talk about mental health. And she, from the stage, talked about her own experience with therapy and finding a therapist. So there are people then came over to our table afterwards, right? So I think we're seeing a lot that of celebrities really, and musicians and artists really modeling and sharing their process. And I think is extremely valuable. It's really helping to break down that stigma around therapy and mental health. So it's powerful for sure.
Awesome, awesome. I think we are going to wrap up now. We are just about out of time. Dr. Jackman, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And once again, this is a topic that we really need to bring out in the open. We need to talk more about this, not only with our children, but with our family, with our friends. We really need to do what we can to chip away at this stigma, particularly in our community. It's super
Absolutely.
super important. Let's see. Where are we?
Thank you. And just thank you. Wonderful. And I saw the chat is like alive. So
Yes,
thank you all.
the chat is just moving. It's moving so quickly.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out to me as well. I love talking about mental health, and our goal is to make mental health cool so our community can get the resources that we need to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackman. I know Dr. Singleton is not here, but thank her for joining us. We really appreciate having both of you. We just have to keep the conversation going. This has been a wonderful discussion, lots of questions, and there's still more. It sounds like we maybe need a part 2 to this to continue the conversation, not just with our experts, but as mothers, we need to have continue that conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. I think we are going to move to the awards, the winners. I am going to. We have 5 lucky winners who are going to receive a $250 American Express gift card. Enjoy a day out and bring your kids for your mental health and theirs. And once again, just remember, you need to be present to win. So I hope you're all on. Okay, I'm going to read the names of the winners. Drum roll. Okay, the first winner is Kiana Hawkins, Hudson County, New Jersey. I think we want everyone to put your name in the chat or just say, hey, I'm here. So we know that you're here and we know that you won. It's Kiana Hawkins, Hudson County, New Jersey. Our next winner is Tiffany Sims, Greater Baltimore, Maryland. Yay, Tiffany. Our third winner is Dee Thomas from Long Island, New York. Yay, Dee. Our next winner is Armanda Estrada Azotam. Beautiful name. From Los Angeles, California, LA. Congratulations. And our very last winner, winner number 5, is Patrice Harrison from San Fernando Valley, California. Awesome, awesome. Just let us know that you are here. Excellent. All right, ladies, I think we are going to end this. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's been a wonderful discussion. Please keep the discussion going. We would like to thank, first, I'd like to thank my Mocha Moms National Board, my incredible Mocha Moms National Board, and in particular, LaShawn Martin and Shalon Newton, who have been instrumental in bringing this program together and making it a wonderful program, and in working on our partnership with the Ad Council. I'd like to thank the Ad Council and the COVID Collaborative for being incredible partners. We look forward to continuing the conversation. We look forward to talking more about this, and we want to thank everybody. Please, please remember to take time for yourselves, have conversations with your children, take in all the information that you can about COVID vaccines, about the importance of wearing masks, and most importantly, love yourself. Take care of yourself. Practice self-care. Practice mental health. Practice just taking care of yourself and your children, and make sure that your children see you doing that so they do the same. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, thank you. We hope to see you again for another exciting program, and thank you to our partners. With that, I'm going to say good night. Good night.